It was exactly 10 years ago this week that Britain voted to leave the EU. The day after the Brexit vote, David Cameron, the then Prime Minister, resigned. He was gone within a month, speaking of the need for a successor to, quote, steady the ship. Off he went, famously humming, as he left the political arena.
So we'll have a new Prime Minister in that building behind me by Wednesday evening. Thank you very much.
Right. 5 Prime Ministers later, there's talk of the Downing Street lectern being set up tomorrow. Once again, that Keir Starmer has chosen flight over a fight to remain in office, with reports that his cabinet have told him time's time. His power base appears to be crumbling. His likely political challenger, Andy Burnham, is on the ascent after winning a seat to become an MP again this week. This is the headline in The Observer this morning. They think it's all over, they say. And in The Telegraph too, talking about Keir Starmer about to resign. It's what Donald Trump is saying too. We don't know on what grounds, but the US president has stuck the boot in as he did. He said it was immigration and his attitude on British energy policy that will cost him the job. He wished him well, he said, at the end. One of Keir Starmer's cabinet, his business secretary, indicated this morning on how he saw things standing right now.
The decisions for Keir to make, also taking the time to think through what the political realities are today compared to last week, the week before. But I know that he's a Prime Minister who always puts country first.
So as we speak, Keir Starmer is in Chequers, the Prime Minister's countryside retreat. He's returning to Parliament tomorrow. And here's the thing, so will Andy Burnham. He's on the morning train from Wigan, newly re-elected as an MP, and he'll arrive to a platform full of TV cameras and journalists expecting an announcement to possibly trigger a leadership contest. Let's go to London. Let's go to Bénédicte Paviot. Bénédicte, great to see you tonight. President Trump seems to have decided he's resigned. Where do things really stand? What are you hearing?
Well, of course, President Trump hasn't decided that he's going to resign. And all President Trump is doing is picking up on the intense speculation and rumours. So what concretely has happened? And if a week is a long time in politics, I can tell you that a weekend is a long time. On Friday, we had that Prime Minister that we can see at the dispatch box. Obviously, this is pre-recorded and archived material. Keir Starmer actually saying that he would fight on. That was just after his biggest rival, Andy Burnham, a former MP, a former Labour minister, and formerly the mayor of Greater Manchester, trounced the Reform UK party far better than even predicted by the polls. He got something like 55% of the votes, which is extraordinary because only on the 6th of May, Reform UK had done extremely well in that very same seat in local elections. So what we've got is we've had crumbling support, growing rumours over the last 48 hours and this weekend. And that same Prime Minister who said that he would fight on after having congratulated Andy Burnham, naturally, for this excellent Labour win. And what we've got is we've got intense speculation that Keir Starmer will make a big announcement. That podium will probably come out yet again, as we've seen so many times here on France 24. We've been there every time. We will be there tomorrow, and we expect that Keir Starmer will announce his resignation and possibly a timetable. My best guess is that possibly he will offer to stand down by September. Why September? Because that gives some time to Andy Burnham to prepare himself for what will be momentous, from going from Greater Manchester Mayor to Prime Minister, leader of the Labour Party, and therefore Prime Minister, as it's the biggest party in the UK. And also will give some time and a dignified exit, for example, attending the NATO summit that's upcoming and other things for Keir Starmer. And what we've got is we've had really a growing unpopularity of this Prime Minister. It has indeed been fueled by immigration. It doesn't take President Trump to tell us that. And we see that in votes for either the Reform UK party or the Restore Britain party. But it's actually lots of other things, like the various 18 or something U-turns they've done on policy. The fact that he's not charismatic and doesn't put his message across terribly well, which he's been trying to improve on, but far too late. And also the major problem in appointing Peter Mandelson, the former UK ambassador, who had to be fired days before that second historic visit of President Trump, state visit last autumn. So all those things and that growing unpopularity, I think there's at least 100 MPs who've actually said that they no longer support Keir Starmer. And UK media finally are reporting that Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, the Climate Change Secretary, Ed Miliband, the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, and indeed the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, have all told Keir Starmer that he needs to quit. And he's been spending the weekend in Chequers, the official PM's residence, with his wife, Victoria, who we know that he takes huge advice from her. And he said only about a month ago that whatever decision and when time would come for him to quit, that he would listen to her. We're seeing her on screen in that orange dress.
This sounds like, from what you're saying, Bénédicte, a limited options rather than an out-and-out decision that this is my time to go. Bénédicte, stay with us. Let's bring in Matthew Torbitt, former Labour advisor, political analyst, writer as well. Good to see you, Matthew. Welcome to France 24.
Evening.
What happens next?
Well, I think, as Bénédicte said, I think there will probably be a sort of transition period. I think there are pros and cons to having a leadership competition. Wes Streeting, the former health secretary who resigned to challenge Keir Starmer, I think has said he would definitely stand. I believe him and Andy Burnham are due to meet on Tuesday this week, possibly to discuss a senior role within his cabinet. That could be anything from Chancellor, or I've also heard Foreign Secretary, in order for Andy Burnham to have a free run at just taking over the mantle from Keir Starmer. I think Bénédicte is right. It would largely be seen as September. You have then a few weeks to plan to the party conference and set out your ambitions in a speech to the party faithful. And also because Andy Burnham, I've been in constant contact with Andy Burnham the last 18 months in the planning of this. He knows he's not ready to step into that job right this moment. I think there will be access talks, much as you would get at a general election, where Andy Burnham would meet with senior civil servants like the permanent secretaries of each department to discuss the ideas and policies he would like to put forward and how realistic they would be for the next 3 years.
This is very interesting, and the kind of, if history doesn't always reflect itself but rhymes, it reminds me of mid-90s, the Granita restaurant in London, Blair, Brown, this famous meeting where they're supposed to have decided that Brown would become Prime Minister after Blair had had his turn, that fateful moment. So maybe another fateful moment if we have Wes Streeting sitting down. Can he be placated, as you suggest? It might be that he's offered Foreign Minister, the Chancellor, maybe Home Secretary. Tell me about the conversations you've had with Andy Burnham's team, how confident they are that he's going to be the next Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think since at least October last year, it seemed obvious if he could find a path into Parliament and somebody willing to potentially give up their seat, he'd have a very good chance. And I think this is largely because the Labour Party is there's many factions within the Labour Party. You have the sort of socialist campaign group on one side, on the left of the Labour Party. You have the sort of Blairites or Progress, as they're known, on the sort of right of the Labour Party. You have the soft left, where I think you could largely put Andy Burnham in. And then you have those without a faction, of which there is very few. And I think because the Labour Party membership has always been, and certainly is at the moment, in a soft left place, and they would like to see somebody not quite to the left of the socialists, but certainly just inside of that from the centre of the Overton window. That's where the membership is, and that's where the votes are. And I think if you look at any polling that's been done by Labour List, the Labour supporting website, Wes Streeting's towards the sort of relegation zone, the bottom four of the cabinet ministers when he was in there, whereas Andy Burnham would in any leadership contest seem to beat anybody that he would come up against, including the current Prime Minister Keir Starmer. So they've always been confident it can be done. I think there's an understanding that you've got to work with people, and I think Andy Burnham is somebody that you could put into the soft left.
No, I'm listening, Matthew. I'm just talking about.
Sorry.
No, I'm still listening to you. Still with you. Carry on.
Oh, sorry. So I think they're aware of that, but they know there's a lot of planning that needs to be done. So now it turns to who does he put into place? There's a lot of talk about Ed Miliband possibly wanting to be Chancellor and how the markets would feel about that, having seen the party going to a more left-wing position and what that would mean. He spoke during this by-election about bringing public utilities into under public ownership, not necessarily nationalisation, but how expensive that would be, where the money comes from. He says he wants to have a plan for social care by December. The money will need to be found for that. So there's a lot of planning needed.
Yes, to that point, it strikes me this moment that we're in right now. Bénédicte, this is a Midsummer Night's Dream right now, isn't it, for Andy Burnham? And there is that old joke that goes around Labour circles that I've mentioned it before, a Blairite, a Brownite, a Corbynite, they go into a bar, the barman says, "What can I get you?" Andy Burnham. They don't quite know who he is. He's everything to everybody right now.
Well, I've met him twice because I've been on a stage with him once in Manchester some years ago when he was already mayor of Greater Manchester. Met him a second time when I was chairing the first ever Franco-British Mayors Summit. And what is striking is the way he's evolved since he was in government. This is a man who is able to speak to just about anybody. Some people in the opposition call that flip-flopping. What is clear is, what is not clear is whether this will be a coronation. But as Matthew was absolutely rightly saying, very much about this possible nationalisation of utilities, where would that money come from? So what is very clear is that Andy Burnham's every pronouncement from now on, and that of whoever he picks as Chancellor, certainly, and we won't know that then until he comes into government. He's not going to tell us that in advance for all the jockeying and rumours that will happen, will now be watched intently by the markets here and around the world. And that will be very important. And we will see who takes what position in his government. But clearly there is an appetite and a feeling within the Labour Party itself, I'm picking up on, that there needs to be some sort of examination of his ideas, not necessarily through a protracted, what could be very bitter and damaging for the Labour Party, long-term internal public fight, but actually, for example, within the PLP, within the Labour Party MPs in Parliament, for them to understand who they would be giving their support to and what his plans are, and whether those plans will be a radical departure from the very manifesto of the man that we're seeing on screen, who is still, as we speak, the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who had been told he would never become Labour leader, who had been told that the Labour Party would not win a general election so quickly after their defeat. And that is where that resilience, and I'm told that Keir Starmer feels very betrayed by many people. But the fact is, he can also feel betrayed by the polls, because the party that's been leading the polls are Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage. And what is so significant about Friday's victory is what Andy Burnham has shown in spades is that the man who can really put them down and put them back, some people call it in their box, is very much Andy Burnham. So he is very much the man that the Labour Party currently, I'm talking about the Westminster Labour Party, very much want to back, because they believe that he could beat Keir Starmer certainly in a general election. And that's the other word. Are we going to get an early general election because Andy Burnham may want his own mandate? It's too soon to talk about that, but I thought I would just put that out there.
It's a very interesting point. And to that, we will have, this is going to evolve in the coming hours. We're expecting something tomorrow morning. As we say, you know, we've got all those journalists, all those cameras are going to be waiting at Euston.
We'll be there.
You will be there as well, and we will be there, therefore.
In Downing Street.
You'll be at Downing Street.
Not at the platform.
I would love to be. Let's go to Matthew a second, because it's worth saying the way Downing Street operates in coordinating interviews on a Sunday. For those watching to try and understand what's being said today, the big broadcasters in the UK, they asked for a figure to be representative of the government position, a cabinet member. The one that was greenlit today to come on was Peter Kyle, the business secretary. He wasn't just shooting the breeze here, was he? When he says Keir Starmer is thinking about political realities, this is carefully calibrated wording. Now, you've worked on the inside. You know, he's actually saying, and you've just mentioned that we're waiting for this statement now. It seems that he's as good as gone. We're waiting for that. Let me show you something as well. This was just a few days ago at the G7. There was this incredible moment, Matthew, where Emmanuel Macron asked where Keir was. And you'll see the family photo taking place around the table. He didn't wait for him. He said, "Can we go ahead, Jonathan?" Jonathan Powell said, "Yeah, you go ahead." We see all the photos, an empty chair, Keir Starmer's not there. Now, a number of diplomats in Brussels have said to me they wouldn't have let that happen to a more powerful leader. It was almost an example, they said, of power draining away. And to that point, who is, in terms of power and European world politics, who do you see? Andy Burnham? West Streeting? Who is it on a world stage that can deal with others, including President Trump?
It's a very good question. I think the one I always thought would actually be box office, and I think Donald Trump would like and could probably handle people diligently, was actually Angela Rayner, the former Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary. She obviously had to resign over housing tax issues and may well get a route back under Keir Starmer. I believe she's got her eyes on the foreign brief as well. I think people like the idea of jetting around the world and dealing with foreign leaders. So Andy Burnham would be an interesting one. I'm not sure how Donald Trump would take to him. Donald Trump is obviously quite complimentary when he's in a good mood. I think he'd maybe call Andy Burnham good looking, as he's done with people before, and maybe he's got a nice accent, he's a nice guy, or whatever else. So I think the slate will start again. West Streeting talks a good game. He's certainly one of the best communicators in the Labour Party at the moment. But has spoken very tough on Donald Trump, even recently. And I think that's something Andy Burnham, has maybe got to be careful of as well. He said during this by-election in Makerfield that he wanted to stop a lurch, as we've seen in America, to a dark and divisive politics. Well, that's obviously a shot across the bows to the current president. And whether he's thought about the fact that actually I might have to deal with this man in a couple of months, that may get regurgitated by media sources, because Donald Trump likes to keep abreast of these things. So it'll be interesting what happens when they do come face to face, because it seems to me Andy Burnham is the shoe-in, bar any surprises, and he's got a lot on his plate.
A lot on his plate. I'll tell you someone else with a lot on their plate. Bénédicte, when we think about Theresa May, her famous lines about strong and stable. The only thing that I can think of at Downing Street, and many people can, is the Chief Mouser. The only thing that just remained throughout.
I'll see him tomorrow. I'll say hello from you. Very briefly, I remember being in, I believe, and that was for the BBC, but I think it was the Cannes summit, and where President Chirac turned and all the leaders were there, and he said at a time of huge crisis for John Major, "Où est John Major?" So it is quite extraordinary. But I believe, unfortunately, Keir Starmer was late by about 20 minutes. He was doing a TV interview. I don't know who was the culprit. But possibly it is because he was weaker. On the other hand, how do you keep so many leaders waiting? Anyway, we'll all be waiting in Downing Street with the red carpet. We'll get the podium out at the last time, possibly, for Mr. Starmer. And of course, I don't think we will see, therefore, Mr. Starmer go to give his resignation as a tradition to the king, because that actually happens when you step down. Things are very brutal in the United Kingdom. When you have a general election, whoever is elected of the head of the, as you know, of the leading party, actually is there the next morning. The removal van's taken away. I think we'll get that down the line. And as Matthew said, I agree that I think it'll be September, because the annual party conferences, the main ones in the year, are then. And it would seem natural that then the new leader, if he or she is in place, and that could be, and we strongly think it will be, Andy Burnham, would be then it's right at the end of September. So we will see, but it's such a turbulent time in British politics, and it's not completely, let's say, linked to the fact that we have the 10th anniversary that we were preparing to mark here on Tuesday, and we will mark, of Brexit.
Bénédicte, thank you for your time. We will talk to you tomorrow. Matthew Torbitt as well, thank you for your time. Former Labour advisor, political analyst and writer.